Good morning, everyone. I am Gautami Khanna, President Enactus GMC, and I will be moderating today's session. On behalf of IQAC Jesus and Mary College and Enactus GMC, I welcome you all to the webinar titled COVID-19, a pandemic of mistreated nature. On this Monday morning, a morning which on our lives before the lockdown, we'd spent stuck in traffic, wishing the weekend had it ended so quickly. And yet, we all miss college and its community. And webinars have become a way for us to continue interacting with and learning from each other. This is one such attempt, a part of the larger webinar series being organized by IQAC JMC. For today's webinar, we have an eminent environmental sciences scholar, Professor P.K. Joshi, with us. We welcome you, sir. We'd like to begin today with a short prayer. I invite Sister Dr. Rosie, Assistant Professor, Department of Elementary Education, to kindly conduct the prayer.
Almighty God, we come before you this morning for your blessings on each one of us, our faculty. In a special way, we ask you to bless Dr. Mani Arul Nandi, the faculty advisor of the Enactus, and all our students and all the participants of this webinar. We pray for all our family members. We pray for the whole world. Grant us, Lord, good health and happiness. Keep us safe from all that is harmful to us. Lord, pour out your Holy Spirit upon our speaker and each one of the participants of today's webinar. We pray for our doctors, nurses, and all our frontline workers, our government, and all other agencies who work so hard to protect us from the coronavirus. Lord, grant us a grateful heart for all the blessings we receive in our daily life, and grant us a generous heart to be sensitive to the needs of others who are less privileged than us, and that we may contribute in building a just and humane society and make this earth a beautiful place for everyone. Amen.
Thank you, sister, for your words of encouragement and your blessings. I would now like to invite Dr. Sandra Joseph, Principal GMC, to give the welcome address.
Thank you, Gautami. Good morning and a very warm welcome to one and all. On behalf of Jesus and Mary College, I extend a very warm welcome to all the participants of this webinar titled COVID-19, a Pandemic of Mistreated Nature, organized by Enactus, whose main objective is to empower people from the marginalized and deprived segments of the society through creating sustainable livelihood opportunities. A very warm welcome to Professor P.K. Joshi from the School of Environmental Studies, JNU, the speaker of the day. Thank you, sir, for consenting to speak on this important topic during these uncertain times. There is no doubt that every human being on earth is affected by one way or the other, mainly by the negative impact that the pandemic has on the environment. What is certain is that there is a sea of humanity who are once again left lost and deprived. It is noteworthy that the students of Enactus, with the guidance and immeasurable support of its dynamic faculty members, Dr. Mani Arul Nandi, Dr. Savita Rastogi, and Ms. Ishita Singh, all of whom together have observed the hidden realities and has responded in several proactive ways, one of which is this webinar. In this context, we would learn greatly from a discussion of the state of our rivers, the various initiatives that are helping in the cleaning of these water bodies, and apply these lessons to adapt Project IFART to the new normal in the post-COVID world. I'm sure, Professor Joshi, your inputs will be a great source of encouragement and hope for all of us today. We look forward to hearing you, and once again, a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. We're glad to have you here with us today. Your words of wisdom are indeed a perfect start for today's enlightening session that we are eagerly looking forward to. Today's webinar has been organized with a view to contemplate on the environmental crisis that we find ourselves in the 21st century, and to think about the sustainable development goals that are today more important than ever before. COVID-19 has had an impact on the social, the economic, political, and psychological aspects of human life and activity. However, there also has been an environmental impact. From people sharing pictures of Himalayas visible from Jalandhar or Saharanpur, or the magnificent picture of 1 million flamingos descending on Mumbai, to the improved air quality index in Delhi, the lockdown, that is reduction of human activity, has invariably led to the reduction in greenhouse emissions and effluents in our rivers from factories and vehicles. However, the disparity in our access to natural resources has also been brought into sharp focus during the pandemic. In India, 163 million people do not have access to clean and safe water, as polluted rivers and poor storage infrastructure over the years has created a water deficit, which may become unmanageable in the future. And a survey conducted in 2013 showed that only 2 out of 10 poor households use soap for hand washing in India. Consequently, prevention of diseases through hand washing is a great challenge for the most vulnerable populations, mainly in informal settlements in the urban areas. The impact of COVID-19 is therefore conflicting and contradictory. At one level, it has reduced air and water pollution. At another level, it has made access to clean water and sanitation even more urgent. At the same time, the lockdown and the norms of social distancing have impacted the extent of social outreach programs. We organized this webinar to learn more about this issue so that we may take lessons and implement them in our lives. And of course, for Enactus GMC, to implement these learnings to our various projects. With this, I'd like to introduce our speaker for the day, Professor P.K. Joshi. Professor P.K. Joshi is professor in the School of Environmental Sciences and the chairperson of Special Center for Disaster Research, JNU, New Delhi. He is the director of Swachha JNU in the university. Prior to this, he was working with Indian Institute of Remote Sensing ISRO for around a decade. He is trained originally as an environmentalist and has developed skills in remote sensing and GIS with a firm scientific research basis. He is a recipient of Young Scientist Medals and National Remote Sensing Award of ISRO. He is Fellow of Indian Academy of Environmental Sciences, Fellow of Indian Geophysical Union, and Fellow of National Academy of Agricultural Sciences. His work is widely published in high-ranked peer-reviewed international and national journals and is a frequently invited speaker in seminars and conferences of international repute. He has also been a visiting faculty to University of Helsinki, Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, and University of Freiburg. Recently, he was recognized as KTP Visiting Fellow for the University of Technology, Sydney, Australia. If you have any questions for Professor Joshi, please post them in the chat box here or in the comment section in the YouTube, which we will take up in the Q&A session. Sir, I'd now like to invite you to take the session forward from here and address the audience.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gautami, and thanks for the introduction. So I would like to share my screen so that, the presentation which I have prepared for today, it is visible to all the audience. Okay, I hope it is visible.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So again, good morning to all. Good morning to all faculty members and students of Jesus Mary College and other institutions. Many thanks to the principal, Dr. Joseph, and to Ms. Gautami for kind introduction. Many thanks to Dr. Mani for bringing me in and giving this opportunity to interact with the bright minds of Jesus and Mary and other institutions. Thanks are also due to Dr. Ishita for great coordination. In fact, I had couple of occasions to interact with students and colleagues of Jesus and Mary, and I must say I am impressed, and I actually mean it, seeing the passion to put the mark on the social and environmental engagement while studying. So with these brief words, I would like to start today's talk. And I preferred talking on, COVID-19, as we all see it, one of the greatest pandemic of maybe the era which we are living in. And to me, it is a result of mistreated nature. And to make it more convenient, I call it mistreated biodiversity. Across the world, when millions of people have been tested positive for COVID-19 and countless more have seen their lifestyle completely transformed as a result of a virus, let us see, how the mistreated nature or biodiversity disturbance, including habitat loss and human-wildlife conflict, could influence the risk of diseases being transmitted from animals to human beings, or might have brought this novel virus to all of us. So one of a very common question comes is, what is nature? If somebody asks me, for me, it is much easier to be felt, and I wish everybody does so, and then communicate it. So,
Sir, sorry to interrupt, but your video is switched off.
Okay, you want that me to on?
Yes, sir, if you can switch it on.
One sec. Okay, sorry for that. So I was talking about nature, and if you see things around yourself, most of the time when people lose their source of income due to any kind of disaster, you will often see them turning to natural resources or in nature per se to make ends meet. So one of the simplest way of understanding nature is the service which we get from these natural resources. And one of the most common terms which we hear around is biodiversity. Again, unlike nature, it is easier to be communicated than felt. In spite of knowing so much of things which we get from water bodies, maybe land, maybe forest, but still people are not able to realize the importance of biodiversity. Or maybe, people intentionally or unintentionally try ignoring the importance of biodiversity. Otherwise, the term, which is relatively very recent when we talk about many of the sciences and disciplines, so it was coined by Professor Walter G. Rosen way back in 1985 and popularized by Professor E.O. Wilson. Probably, both of them never thought of that the term will be prefixed by something called as conservation or conservation of or conservation for. And you won't be surprised to know that in most of the universities, colleges, institutions, whensoever biodiversity is talked about, taught, most of the time emphasis is given on conservation. It means we have actually done something to biodiversity which was not expected. Otherwise, just in 3-4 decades, such kind of shift from a discipline into a practice of maintaining it has come so early. Other examples could be, if you see the recent Biodiversity Day when we celebrated, so the theme was our solutions are in nature, or time for nature. Same was when we were talking about World Environment Day. So it means it has actually become a great concern that biodiversity needs to be looked at from a perspective that it actually brings a service to human beings or society. If we get into very factual grounds, so let me remind you that, you know, only in India, if you see, almost 30% of India's population directly drives its livelihood from immediate biodiversity. And if you try to look into the value chain trade of biological resources, so there are, you know, derivatives which are responsible for creating for jobs for probably another 30% of the population. So this shows us, you know, the kind of dependency which is there. And still, this appears to be most challenging to the common senses that, you know, the human societies or the human activities which are taking place, those are actually fundamental to biodiversity or the services which come from these. One of the research, it shows that more than half of the world's total GDP, which is equivalent to 44 trillion of the economic value generation, is moderately or highly dependent on nature or its services, and therefore exposes to, you know, lot of nature loss. Say, for example, if you put three of the largest sectors which are dependent on nature, one is construction. This is what you see around yourself, and specifically countries like India and China and Asian countries. Second is agriculture, again, for our food dependency, food security and all, you get to see a lot of things happening around. And also the food and beverages. If I try to quantify this, for construction, the dependency goes somewhere 4 trillion. Agriculture, 2.5 trillion. And food and beverages, around 1.5 trillion. So, you know, these are the primary industries which could be seen in a straightforward way and which could be grasped in a much easier way. But there are many of the secondary and tertiary industries which are again dependent on, if not directly, but you see a very close connectivity with the nature. You know, chemical and materials which we are using, aviation, travel and tourism, real estate, mining of metals, again, supply chain of these all kind of things. Even the lifestyle or the consumer goods which we are dependent on. So there is a very high degree of hidden dependency when you look into supply chain of all these subsectors. So if we are not convinced that we are highly dependent, but we should accept that we are moderately dependent on nature for all these kind of things. One of a quick assessment which we all might have witnessed or should witness is, see that, you know, when this COVID lockdown was introduced, you got to see as if Earth has gone into a detoxing mode. It means when we are not interacting with nature, natural resources in our common practices, there is a huge shift in configuration of environment which is around us. So that is what, you know, people should realize. And if you are still interested in much more quantitative or economic, you know, values for that, let us look into the you know, the World Economic Forum's 2020 Global Risk Report, wherein through a very comprehensive risk perception survey, they have ranked biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse as one of the top 5 risks in terms of likelihood and impact in coming decade. So that is the value of biodiversity. And if you see the other 4 challenges which they have listed, geopolitical, economic, climate, and technology governance. Within these, if you try to further dissect along, you will see that most of the geopolitical unrest, most of the economic, you know, race, it is directly linked to the way we handle our natural resources, or the way natural resources prevail over the special domain. And climate and technology governance have some kind of equal footage into this. Yet the general confusion persists on what amount of nature loss has occurred, why it relates to human prosperity, or how to confront its loss in a practical manner, especially when we talk about the business world. So it cannot be seen with that kind of linear telescopic view, the way we try to see rest of the world. But we actually understand that once a natural system is triggered, it has capability to go much farther than the average implications which anybody can think. And what evidence do we need other than this COVID-19, which has actually, in a way, frozen the entire world? You see your immediate surrounding, you see the country, you see the entire world. So that is what, mishandling of nature and biodiversity can bring in. I will bring on facts to further substantiate what the statement which I am making. But many a times people question, where is this biodiversity? I haven't seen this biodiversity. Where does it exist? So there comes a term ecosystem from the sciences. There was a gentleman called Sir A.G. Tensley. He coined this term for the first time, and it was basically looked at as an assemblage of biotic and abiotic factors. And when you look at that definition and functioning of that definition, you will see that there is a well-defined structure of any of the ecosystem. You talk of wetlands, you talk of grasslands, you talk of agriculture areas, you talk of human settlements, you talk of natural forests, and even high alpine mountains. They all have a structural configuration. If you play with that structural configuration, you see that people generally saying that the ecosystem is destroyed. But how do I understand that ecosystem is destroyed? One of the quick indicator is the functions which these ecosystems are known for, what the services they provide. So the structure is linked to the function which these ecosystems provide. And we come to know that the water which was for a particular purpose, it is no more suitable for that. It means by redefining the structure of water, by introducing pollutants or any kind of thing, you have tried rechanging the function and it is no more suitable. So to me, ecosystem comes from a drop of water to entire planet Earth. So these all things come within the definition of ecosystem. To make it much more simpler, let me bring this, this typical graphics, which I often use while giving lectures and even telling students what actually is happening in the ecosystem. What you see on the maybe your right-hand side, which is in the circle, that is typically what ecosystem is taught, and the ecosystem exists. It means all living creatures, irrespective of their shape, size, even number, population, they all interact with each other. And these interactions are merely for two things. One is energy, what you get from your food, and another is social interaction. So there are energy demands for which these interactions are spelled out, and there are also social demands for which these interactions are spelled out. But what has happened over the period, one species over the entire planet, which has tried dominating over the entire ecosystem. And many a times I feel actually not very comfortable, and many a times, when you talk to anthropologists and all, they second this statement. One gender from that, that Homo sapiens has tried to dominate over so many things. You see the domestic things, you see the social things, even that happens in the natural landscapes as well. So the ecosystem which should have been there, it has got converted into something called as ecosystem. And any kind of environmental problem, whether you talk about global environmental change, climate change, other kind of degradation in services and all, those all are as a result of degradation of this ecosystem. For that, there was a wonderful study which was carried out by UN Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. Sorry, in source I have written 2015. It is actually 2005. So this exercise was carried out at the behest of United Nations, and they found that ecosystems primarily provide us 4 types of services: provisioning in terms of food, fodder, fuel wood, timber, regulatory services, climate regulations, disease regulations, water purification, cultural. We know at least the country like India should appreciate how closely we are interlinked with natural systems in our cultural aspects, and many of the supporting services. So this study tells us that around 65% of ecosystem services have degraded in last 3-4 decades. That is what we are left with. So, and why probably it is happening? One of the data set tells us that 15 to 70,000 of the species are harvested for medicine. And if you believe only in modern medicine, so 50% of this harvesting is actually done for modern medicine. So that kind of dependency is there, and that kind of degradation is happening. Similar is the outcome from another set of scholars which are working under something called as Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem, IBEPS in short. So they have also suggested similar kind of thing, how the quality of life or human well-being has got affected because of the interaction which we have with natural systems. It could be direct, it could be indirect. Even they have questioned on the institutional arrangements, governance, the way governments are handling natural systems and all. So at times you might get a very direct example, but many a times there are more of indirect drivers which are affecting this natural system and ultimately somewhere affecting the quality of life. So how does these kind of things actually take place, and which are generally referred to as threat to biodiversity? So again, the father of biodiversity, Professor E.O. Wilson, has given a formula, HIPPO, HIPPO Concept. He says that one is habitat loss, and it is happening. We are clearing many of the natural ecosystems just for the desires of human beings. Another is invasive species. You get to see lantana, Parthenium, Prosophis, so many invasive species coming into and fighting with the native species and changing the configuration, structure of the ecosystem and then subsequent functions of ecosystem. Pollution is another big problem which is affecting natural ecosystems by and large, and then the quality of services which they provide. Population growth, and precisely human population growth, which has gone somewhere 8 billion kind of size number. So that is again, overgrowth in population. In addition to that, over harvesting beyond your needs. So these are the directly linked things which are actually threat to the biodiversity. And if you see around yourself, you will actually find in one or the other way, yes, habitat loss is taking place. Invasion is there, pollution is there, overgrowth is there, over-harvesting is there. And what we are left with, a totally different type of era, which is called as Anthropocene, which is precisely, human dominance, ecosystem, which is defining where what should be available and what kind of distribution should be there. Let me bring some of the factual things to you. When I say we are close to 8 billion people, and if you see by weight, we are simply 0.01% of all living beings on the earth. You can imagine the proportion which we have. In spite of that smaller proportion by weight, we have altered 75% of the land, 66% of the marine environment. We have actually caused loss of 83% of the all wild mammals and half of the plants which are around. And actually, our ecosystems have declined both in their size and conditions by close to 50% when you do a global assessment and when you compare it with the baseline. Around 25% of the assessed, and again, let me emphasize this, only assessed plants and animals species are threatened because of human activities, with another million species which are facing extinction or which actually many have left us. So current production, consumption patterns, land use, urbanization, population dynamics, trade, industry, and governance models, they actually underpin the biodiversity loss. And they all are basically, what should I say, alarming us or calling for a radical rebooting of humanity's relationship with nature. And herein, I like the clubs of the way Jesus and Mary is involved or is trying to bring in students to understand the relationship with nature or at least take care of that. And this is precisely the reason what you are doing at your college level, entire globe is thinking about that. And United Nations has come with Sustainable Development Goals, which we are supposed to meet by probably 2030. Again, if you do a very close study of these Sustainable Development Goals, you will find that 12 out of these 17 sustainable goals, they actually revolve in and around natural systems or nature. So what I am trying to convince you all is, if you take care of nature, if you maintain a harmonious relationship with nature, many of the Sustainable Development Goals will be automatically taken care. But those could be grouped as valuing and conserving nature, where you talk about clean water, sanitation, life below water, life on earth, deploying nature-based solutions to address the social challenges, when you talk about no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, sustainable cities and communities, and even climate action. Or if you talk about promoting and supporting effective and equitable governance of natural resources, gender equity comes here, reduced inequality comes here, peace, justice, and strong institutions come here, partnership of the goals come here. When I'm listing these all, these are actually Sustainable Development Goals. And even the other ones, whether you talk about quality of education, we have realized that the component should be integrated with natural systems. Of late, many of the teachers, even in schools and colleges, they are taking initiatives to change the quality of education by bringing students close to natural systems and all. And then there is decent work, there is industrial innovation, infrastructure, responsible consumption, affordable clean energy. So they appear in a other cluster, but again, there is a strong linkage with nature. So what exactly is happening with natural systems? This is one of a typical example which globally people talk about, and I thought I should bring it on to all of you. Bushmeat is one of the challenges. And believe me, bushmeat is necessity for a set of communities which are residing in Latin America or Africa or some of the mountain ecosystems, because this is the cheapest source of protein for them. They don't get any alternate source of proteins. So, the problem is you have man-made ecosystems and you have natural ecosystems. In between, there is a fringe population or a forest margin population, wherein close interaction is with natural systems, but somewhere they also interact with the human societies or so-called cities, towns, urban areas and all. Now, the food which is necessity for them, for us, it becomes a luxury. And because of our economic growth, often we feel, let us try those kind of delicacies. Let us have once in a while on weekends or sometime, can we have those kind of delicacies on our plate? And that brings much higher pressure on the forest margins and on the forest ecosystems. And what actually is happening, instead of collecting the larger mammals, which they used to hunt for their living, they are also getting dependent on the dead animals which are found in natural ecosystems, and they are just dragging it and sending it back to our market, and we are interacting with that because of our economic growth. This is what has actually happened in Wuhan city, the wet market, which in a typical manner, what they call, they are trying to eat and digest anything which moves, anything which is eaten anywhere in the world. So that kind of interaction has come into bats, chimpanzees, gorillas, you name them, and those are collected for bushmeat. Not only this, people are also collecting rodents, these rats and mouses. The reason is very simple, because they multiply very fast. So their collection is very easy. Statistics tells us 90% of bushmeat collection across the world is illegal. It means it is only 5% which is legally being collected. It means everything is moving towards unsustainable practices. People generally argue, why can't we bring some other kind of sources of proteins for these communities? So one of the statistics tells us that only in Congo Basin, around 5 trillion tons of bushmeat is consumed per year. And if you want to equate it in producing the cattle, you need 20 to 25 million hectares of forest to graze or to have fodder for them. And we actually understand that can't happen, the way human population is increasing, the way we are increasing our catchments and all. So that kind of severe problems are there. So it doesn't mean that we simply can't close our eyes towards that. Anything and everything which is available, even the scrap of biodiversity which is available, that is priceless. And we need to understand what it means to human societies and all. Otherwise, this is the global richness map of geographic origins of emerging infectious diseases between 1940 and 2004. You see these things wheresoever you have population, higher population density or relatively better economic well-being, you get to see more events of emerging infectious diseases there. So it gives you a very direct relationship the way we are handling natural systems, only because we are economically sound. And if you try plotting the decadal number of emerging infectious diseases over the period, you will see that, and what I'm showing you with respect to pathogen, with respect to transmission rate, with respect to drug resistance and transmission mode. So most of the diseases nowadays which are there, those are zoonotic. Zoonotic are the ones which actually come from animal world to human world. So, and their drug resistance is much higher, their transmission mode is much higher. So you might be able to see more of similar kind of diseases. And this COVID-19, this new strain of coronavirus, it is very likely that it has originated in bats and then it has gone to pangolins and finally to us. There is another school of thought which talks about the laboratory work in one city and all. That might exist, but we don't have a very clear-cut evidence. But science tells us, wildlife biologists tell us, or ecologists tell us that this is one of the zoonoses which we have experienced earlier. Let me give you another facts. 75% of new or emerging diseases, they actually originate in animals, and more than 60% are known to be infectious diseases. And one of the study tells us that in last 60 years, there are 435 diseases that have actually jumped from animals to human societies. And these zoonoses, they emerge, they re-emerge, and they keep on, coming. And this list is not the complete one, but the main one which probably everybody understands. And another, finding of IPEBS, it says that there are another 1.7 million viruses which are moving around. and they can, anytime, they can spill over to human beings. It means in coming period, you will be getting more kind of similar diseases. And you just turn pages, go to 2013, Ebola outbreak, and try to understand what was the root cause. People have told us in West Africa, it is a simple reason of forest losses. And forest losses means there is a close contact between wildlife and human settlements. Similar is with Nipah virus. Somewhere in 1999, it is again linked to intensification of pig farming and even fruit production in the expansion of fruit production in Malaysia. Avian influenza, which is time immemorial, you'll always find that it is only and directly linked to intensive poultry farming. So that kind of world we are living in, and these all diseases are actually coming because of the interaction which increases between human beings and wildlife, and many a times through livestock as well, or they alter our food chain, our eating habits and our preferences for food, and that also brings a gateway for spillover of diseases from this wildlife to us. Another challenge which is with us and which is important to mention here is global climate change. And global climate change, human well-being, ecosystem function, they all are increasingly affected by shifting in geography of life. What do I mean with this? It means the range of species distribution, it is shifting, and it is bound to affect human well-being, both directly, say through these emerging diseases or changes in food supply, or maybe indirectly by degrading some of the ecosystems. Like you see Lantana camara, the invasive species with bright flowers and very strong smell, which is around roads and all. These all are getting into forest ecosystems, and they are competing with forest, and they are degrading those kind of things. Some people say they are bringing some kind of feedbacks also, the shift in the range. That's fine. If it is a negative feedback, it's good. But if it is at all positive feedback, it is again alter the pace of climate change. It means problems with much larger impact. People have tried looking into mammal and virus network, and if you see the present day viral sharing network by mammal order inferred for the model pairwise predictions of viral sharing. So you will see that bats, they are playing a very significant role. Probably they are intermediate between mammals and avian species. The other set of things are rodents, like mouse and all. And this is what you see. If you have followed the news recently, there is another virus which was reported from China, and it has come because of the consumption of rodents. So that kind of thing is there. But if you see future and projected viral sharing, probably bats will be disproportionately sharing the highest load of transmitting such type of viruses to us. So we need to take care of that. And we need to maintain habitats of bats so that they don't come in closer contact to human beings. Or we need to stop dependence on those. And bats are wonderful, creatures. They are the probably only night pollinators. They provide such a nice service to us. People who read or know about beverages and all, there is something called as shots of tequila. If you see that comes only because of the pollination of a specific plant, flower, which is only because of bat. It happens in Madagascar. So we might be losing so many services if we don't handle it. And science also tells us, if you predict these kind of things for 2070, so most of the viral sharing will be in the locations where human population density is high or will become higher. It means there is a fairly good amount of chance, if we don't take care of our nature or climate today, by 2070, there will be much frequent encounters between these viruses and human beings. You know, I have, and many of the colleagues who are sitting here, probably we have lived half of our age. But think about our kids, you know, the next generation. How shall they maintain such kind of world or environment? We are actually gone down with this lockdown. Imagine if this becomes a very frequent activity. Probably this is the reason why WHO is talking about, you know, One Health program, and it has this initiative which advocates managing the issue of human health in relation to environment and biodiversity. It has these three main objectives: combating zoonoses, ensuring food security, and looking into the fighting antibiotic resistance. And we all need to take care of that. Otherwise, the way we are venturing into unsustainable practices, we will not be leaving anything good for the next generation. And imagine the magnitude of pressure, anxiety, or other kind of troubles they will be facing if at all such type of predictions stand true. But I'm quite, you know, optimistic person, and my optimism comes from the, you know, the global initiatives which are there. You know, things are actually changing. A few of the countries have started this journey. Like Indonesia, it has introduced a moratorium on peatland conversion by actually restricting the issuing of new agriculture licenses. Same as Costa Rica. They have tried to redirect their cattle subsidies towards, you know, by paying the farmers and landowners so that some of the ecosystems could be preserved, or their ecosystem services could be provided. One of the quick ecosystem services what we get from these forest areas is carbon sequestration. It means checking the climate change, or watershed protection. It means providing opportunity for water or other kind of resources from soil which can take care of that. Even the countries like France, you know, they are not standing still. They are actually, they have taken initiative for a duty for care law to include environmental assessment in industrial supply chains. You will be surprised to know the EPA, Environmental Protection Act, which we have since 1986, the last thing is already there. But probably our illiteracy towards legal instruments, or the way legal instruments are exercised, enforced. So probably we are not able to understand that such type of legislative instruments somewhere provide opportunity to check the degradation which people are bringing to world or country. Similar is the things which came forward in G7 summit. You might be knowing India is not party to this, but recently our Prime Minister was the special invitee there. It means somewhere we understand what G7 summit says, or somewhere what people are discussing there, they understand what is happening in the country. One of the beautiful thing which actually I liked and I preferred sharing it with the youth is 50 companies and 250 brands have signed something called as G7 Fashion Pact. It is actually to stop global warming, restore biodiversity, and protect the oceans. So such kind of things are happening. People are, you know, planning or are committing to shift from beef or pork consumption to vegetarian food or simpler type of, you know, domesticated non-vegetarian items. Like soya supply, which is a huge business globally. You know, they have around 57 institutional investors. You know, they play a big role in economy. They have actually they have asked all the soya trading companies to demonstrate commitment to eliminating deforestation. What does it mean? It means that publicly disclosing their policies on the issue of deforestation, degradation, and ensuring that, you know, while growing soya or while providing it, they are not compromising with natural ecosystems and all. So that is something very good news. And these are some of the global pictures. We need to bring similar kind of things in our domestic innovations and activities also. To my understanding, when the entire world is talking about like internet or other things, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, robotics, virtual reality, these all things are great. These all are essential components of fourth industrial revolution. But let us bring that the great opportunity is provided to support the shift towards net zero or nature positive world. Some of the people are talking about this, and that is what this year was all about. Everybody was calling it as a super year for nature. There were a number of global meetings which were planned, like World Congress, Conservation Congress, UN Ocean Conference, UN Nature Summit. They all were trying to talk about global biodiversity. And we were expecting something as post-2020 biodiversity framework. And, people talk about this virus from China. And in fact, China was planning to host something called as COP15 to discuss on Convention on Biodiversity at CUNY. So same way, the UN Climate Change Conference, COP26, which was planned in UK, so they were again talking about natural systems and all. So entire world is, or if not the politicians, but at least some of the head of the states and academicians, researchers, scientific community, and common people at large, they are talking about having restoration processes. In fact, globally, they were trying to call it as a decade of restoration, so that nature-based solutions could be talked in climate negotiations and all. So with this, let me tell you 5 quick points, which as a practice, as a researcher, or while teaching and doing my activities, I have understood any kind of environmental change which is taking place, that is actually somewhere linked to human activities. So let us try looking at that, how do we reorganize our activities in a way that it has least impact on the changes which it is bringing to environment. I don't say we all should sit at a place and don't do any kind of social or economic activity. But it is a very high time to relook into our activities, try to reorganize them so that our impact on environment is least. Probably we can't do it, we can't nullify that, but still that is something very important. Second thing is, try looking at if we can minimize human and wildlife interaction and even livestock interaction with the wildlife. So, like nowadays, when there were pictures and news coming, wildlife is coming on to the main road and they are recapturing their spaces, people were finding that very interesting. But for me, it was actually very funny. It's not good, Wildlife has a area and habitat for them. They should remain there. We shouldn't try to degrade that or create any of the opportunity that they come onto the mainland where human beings are residing. Vice versa. We should also not venture into any of the activities so that we get into or we encroach into wildlife areas and all. Same is, we should respect ecosystem and ecosystem integrity, because it is something very important for overall human development and human health. Actually, human health is dependent on ecosystem stability, ecosystem well-being. You again try looking at, because of the modified habitats and interactions with wildlife population, you get to see they favor many of the hosts, vectors, pathogens, which result into a whole range of diseases to human societies and all. And in fact, science tells us that diversity of species, it is something very important to regulate diseases. If you have a rich biodiversity, well-defined core area, well-defined buffer area, and whole lot of trophic levels to interact with each other, these diseases will remain there, or these will not spill over to other communities like human beings and all. And believe me, science is telling us, natural sciences, physical sciences, mathematical sciences, literal knowledge, is telling us that it is actually impossible to predict the next outbreak. And next outbreak is bound to come. It may happen in 2021. It may happen in 2022. So it will not wait for a decade or something to come out and again knock at our doors. It may come tomorrow. So that kind of, edge tipping point we are standing at. So this is something very important to understand, realize, and accordingly, practice. So the final words, like, Sir Winston Churchill, he gets a credit of saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. So probably, this 2020 is actually year of reflection, opportunity, and solutions to many of the problems which we are facing. So as Bill Clinton or William Bill Clinton said, build back better. So let us look into that. How can we build back better? This is used as a mantra in post-disaster reconstruction program, but it is very important for all of us. Our life after this COVID will, people are talking about new normal, but it shouldn't be anywhere close to normal. We actually have to ourselves rethink on our activities and create something which is not normal the way we do things. We will have to venture into tough decisions, tough practices, changing in lifestyles, so that we can actually take care of the nature or natural system. People were talking bend the curve very loudly for the this pandemic or flattening the curve. I would urge all of you that let us try looking at opportunities to bend the curve of biodiversity loss or impact on natural systems. If we are able to do it, you will see direct benefits coming to human beings. Not only human beings, typically life on the earth, entire set of life on the earth. And entire world is talking about this, world, everybody is saying that world will not be the same after COVID-19. So let us integrate these kind of thoughts, this kind of introspection for the next word, for the new word, with a greater respect to the biodiversity, greater respect to the nature, and it will be actually the greatest immediate benefit for all of us. So that is what I would share with you as a take-home message. Finally, before actually closing, it might have given us a window, might be very narrower window, but it is actually an opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. Try minimizing human-wildlife conflict in any of the manners. That is actually not good. And probably this is the best time when, or probably this opportunity will not come again to all of us to actually rethink and redesign ourselves for the better word. Otherwise, the word which we are practicing with or which we are trying to leave to our children or grandchildren, believe me, that is going to be much more deadlier experiences of pandemic and much more unfortunate in many of the senses. And they will never appreciate us for our deeds, what we are into today. So I just stop here, and I will be happy if you have any question or if I'm able to answer those questions. Please.
Thank you, Professor Joshi, for such an educational and insightful lecture. You've given us a lot of food for thought and possible measures that we may implement in our own projects. I'd now like to invite Ms. Sharanya Verma, Vice President Enactus JMC, to moderate the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautami. I would like to thank Professor Joshi for the extremely informative lecture. At the beginning of the webinar, we had asked you all to post your questions in the chat box or in the comment section below. We have received a lot of questions from the audience, but due to paucity of time, we will not be able to take them all, although we'll try to take up as many as possible. And now, in the spirit of making it more interactive, I'd like to invite Dr. Christu Doss to pose his question to Professor Joshi.
Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
Am I audible, Sharanya?
Very
Yes,
much.
sir. Yes.
Okay. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. Just have a straightforward question, and your comment maybe will be an enlightening one. As environmentally conscious teachers, because some of us teach environmental science, even though we don't have a degree in environmental science, but as a student of history, I even teach environmental science from a multidisciplinary perspective. And we also have students. I'm thinking, because we do understand that ecosystems naturally restrain the transfer of diseases from animals to humans. It's a basic. But nevertheless, this hardly becomes the reality in our day-to-day life. As we all know, that ecosystems become degraded due to commercialization of forests. I'm not blaming a government or any community which reside, but I think in one way or the other, we are all responsible. And then maybe you have agricultural intensification, maybe June cultivation to some parts of the country, and so on and so forth. So I'm just wondering, how as a teacher, how do we address this ever-widening complex relationship between society and environment from a multidisciplinary approach? Because most of the time we think, this is the job of an environmental scientist or environmental teacher. So how even a person who doesn't belong to environmental science can be made or to be aware of what is going on around the environment and so on and so forth. Could you please throw some light on this, how to address this whole complex relationship from a multidisciplinary approach? Thank you, Professor Joshi.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for such a nice question. And if you are a colleague from Jesus and Mary, I should, rather answering this, I should congratulate you that you are, on the actual footsteps what teachers should do. But still, for sharing with the larger audience which we have, we need to bring a degree of consciousness and instill that in students, in researchers, immaterial which disciplines they are in. One of the, this question comes very much from the urban dwellers, that how somebody in Delhi or in Jesus and Mary or in JNU can actually do into that. Actually, we have an ample opportunity to create green spaces. People are talking about green and blue spaces, but I will remain very much focused to green spaces only. Let us try encouraging students and our kids, and I take that very responsibly, that creating and maintaining green spaces around ourselves. It could be very small lawn, it could be terrace garden, it could be backyard kitchen garden. In any of the forms, we should try bringing that. The moment kids get engaged to these natural systems, they automatically develop a degree of belongingness. And they are the ones who will be governing the country, world. You accept it or not, but after 20 years, they will be the main actors. And if they have that sense of belongingness to natural system, their decisions will always go in the right direction. I see it with my colleagues around me. If you see a gradation, there are some of the people, they have that kind of affinity. So let us start that and maintain it, and they will certainly carry it forward. At the same time, when there are bigger problems, let us try looking at, by our lifestyles, by our research, by our teachings, or by our communications in any of the forums, how can we generate higher degree of awareness towards it? Aware citizen, learned citizen will be able to take better decisions. That is what I believe.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question is by Dr. Mani Nandi. Professor Joshi, people have sought memories when they go through the crisis. They talk about rethinking and redesigning, but once the pandemic is over, they will forget it. It's a reality. So how do you make people think about changing at a micro level?
Great, madam. Thank you. Thank you very much for posting this. And to a great extent, I do share what you wish to say with reference to short memories. But in spite of that, the jolt this pandemic has given to all of us, it should actually remain with us for quite good time, and it will. Because when I talk to some of the elders in my family and friends, they always say we never saw such type of word in our lifetime. This is the magnitude of this jolt which has actually shattered all of us. And I think you and I have responsibility to translate this jolt into a meaningful lesson. And all teachers should, and parents should try doing that and ensure that this doesn't happen. But as you refer to the micro level changes, interventions, as in the previous response I said, now we have much better examples or easier ways to convince our surrounding that, what may it bring if we don't take care of nature or natural systems. So there are shifts in our lifestyle, you accept or not, but if you, retune last 4 months, we have actually changed a lot, maybe because of compulsion. But let us realize and let us make people realize that this is the reality, and natural systems can always bring us back to the same quarters. So if we don't take judicial or more sensible steps today.
Thank you so much, sir. So that's all the questions that we have time for today. Thank you for joining us and for your active participation. With this, we come to an end to the webinar. I would like to request Dr. Amita Motwani, convener webinar committee, to kindly give the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharanya. It's my pleasure as well as privilege to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of IQAC GC St. Mary College to all those who have made this webinar possible. First and foremost, our speaker, Professor P.K. Joshi, for delivering such an incisive talk on the subject. Our principal, Dr. Sandra Joseph, for her support and encouragement. Special thanks to Dr. Sister Rosalie, who is the force behind starting the JMC webinar series. Team Enactus, who took the initiative to organize this webinar. The entire core team, led by the President Gautami Khanna, Vice President Sharanya Verma, and Janvi. They have been working under the able guidance of the Society's faculty advisors, Dr. Mani Arul Nandi, Dr. Savita Rastogi, and Ishita Singh. The IQAC coordinator, Dr. Alka Marwa, who was supposed to present this vote of thanks initially, but she's sorry she could not be present. And all the other senior members of the JMC webinar team need to be thanked. They have been guiding Naveen, Megha, Vrinda, and Gaurav, who have hosted today's webinar, and Shikha, who will be preparing the certificates. Last but not the least, all the participants who made this webinar a grand success. Thank you very much.